What's up, everybody? Well, I got another Asus G15 Advantage video for you guys today. And today, I had an interesting video for you guys thought up. Now, the reason I'm making this video is someone hit me up and told me that you actually don't really get very much performance from hooking it up to an external monitor. And I was under the impression that you get a pretty decent amount. So then I thought, and I only think that because this Jared guy, I can't remember the full YouTube name, but there was this Jared guy who does a lot of videos just like on laptops. And he showed hooking this thing up to an external monitor was like basically making it compete. Instead of being like a 3070 Ti, it made it basically right on the heels of a 3080 laptop. So I was like, okay, that's pretty neat. But maybe he cherry picked a bunch of video games, or I misunderstood something in his video. That could be. Maybe there's just one game where it competed with the 3080, and then the rest of the time it was just like a 3070 and only got, like the guy said, 3-4 FPS, you know, tops. So I figured in today's video, why don't we go and benchmark a couple games? I'm not gonna actually play the actual games themselves. I just kind of want to run the in-game benchmark. So I'm just gonna go pick a bunch of games at random, and we're just gonna run the benchmark on the laptop itself, no external monitor, and then we're just gonna jump back on over and hook it back up to the 1440p monitor, but we're not gonna set the resolution to 1440p. We'll leave that at 1080p even though it's a 1440p monitor just to keep it apples to apples. That way the only thing we're changing is external monitor to internal. That way we can see if we actually get a decent performance boost. Maybe the guy is right and we only get 2, 3, 5 FPS top, but I was hoping for a little bit more FPS, like 8 to 10 in some games, you know? But there's only one way to find out. I'm just gonna pick a couple of games here and we'll just run the in-game benchmark. Again, like I said, laptop screen, external screen, and then I'll show you guys all the data, and then we'll wrap the video on up at the end and we'll see what the results are, because I really have no idea what's going to happen, and that's why I thought this would be a fun video for you guys. We'll actually get to see if the external monitor really makes that much of a difference or not, because the Jared guy sure said it did, and I sure thought it did, but maybe the one guy's right, and this is not like a, man, I've got to prove this guy who said something about the thing wrong. No. I just generally want to know who's right, and then figured, hey, this will help everybody else who watches my channel too. So why the hell not? This seems like a great idea for a video. So without any more blabbering, why don't we go ahead and jump into the first game? And I think we'll start with one of my favorites, as you guys know, Forza Horizon 5. So let's hop on into the game. All right, guys, before we do the benchmark, I just want to show you what we're running at here. So we're going to do 1080p on both of them, obviously, to keep it fair. And we got no VSync or anything on to block the FPS from going as far as it wants to go. No FSR or anything either. And then on this particular game, we've just got it pretty much maxed out. So everything is up as high as it is. There is no more arrow to turn anything else up. So now, why don't we run the benchmark real quick? We're going to run it on the laptop screen itself, like I said, and then we'll hook the monitor back up. We'll quit the game and all of that, just so it doesn't get confused. Because I already know, if you just change settings when the game's running and whatnot, a lot of times it fucks up. So probably the same thing if you try to randomly hook a monitor up all of a sudden, like right after the benchmark gets done. So I'll try not to let stupid crap like that affect any of these tests, because I want this to be a good video. So let's go run the benchmark and then we'll hook it up to the external monitor and see what kind of performance differences we get. All right, guys, so for this test, we got 77 average FPS, 2 stutters. And I'm just going to take a quick look at the average FPS here and the FPS minimum maximum. I think it said for our CPU simulation we got 203. FPS minimum simulated is 171.3 and FPS max is 226. So obviously you guys can read the other ones yourselves. And now it's time for us to go ahead and hook it up to the external monitor and see how it fares. How many FPS will we get? Will it be the same? Will it be more? Who knows? That's why we're doing this video. Let's go find out though. All right, guys. So we only got 1 FPS more. So far it seems like off to a start. The one guy is more right than the Jared dude so far, because we only got 1 FPS, and that's even within the realm of error, you know? That could just be, yeah, I could run it on the thing 3 or 4 times and I might get 78 or 79 or something, you know? So far, and then let's see, let's look at our FPS average. Those actually might have gone up a teensy bit, but I'd have to go back and look at the actual videos real quick. I'll try to write down all these and tell you at the end, if I remember. But now, why don't we go ahead and move on to the next game. Now we're going to do Cyberpunk, so I figured we'd go over the settings real quick. We're on custom, high texture quality, no FSR or anything like that, maxed out field of view. A lot of stuff's on medium and low. Well, one thing's on low, distant shadows. I really don't give a fuck about distant shadows. And no ray tracing, as this laptop falls flat on its face whenever you try to do ray tracing. So, now, why don't we go run the benchmark real quick, get a baseline, and then we'll hook it on up to the external monitor and see what's what. Well, here we go. We got an average FPS of 116.24, a minimum of 50.56, and a maximum of 159.75. And that's at 1080p, I forgot to mention. We're just doing 1080p. Same thing when I hook it up to the 1440p monitor. Even though it's a 1440p monitor, I'm always setting the game to 1080p to keep it fair. So, now, why don't we go and exit out of the game, hook the monitor back up, and see how it does on external. Now, we got the benchmark all done. We got 118 FPS average on the dot, which I believe we got 115 before, so that's a whopping only a few FPS more. So what, 3 FPS more. We got 54 minimum and 176.97 max, which is very similar. Heck, that might even be less than before. I think we might have gotten 178 max before, so we might have even lost max FPS. But anyway, so again, the guy seems to be right on the money, and that Jared guy seems to be not correct. But that's only 2 games so far. We're going to test quite a few, so maybe some of the other ones it'll be more of a difference. Who knows? That's why we're doing this, because we'll find out, and then we'll know. Anyway, moving on. Okay, real quick, let's go over the display settings. We're doing 1080p, DirectX 12, exclusive full screen on the right GPU, no Fidelity FX, and anything maxed out. Now for the graphics, we're on custom. We're pretty much maxed out besides having ray tracing on. No ray tracing for the shadows. And I think that's the only thing ray traced in this game. So, we'll scroll down there to the bottom so you guys can see it. And obviously if I went too fast through this screen, you want to look at the settings more, you can just give it a good old pause. But now, it's time to run the benchmark and see how it does. Well, alright. Results are in, and we got an average of 122 on just the monitor itself. And this is the driver we're on 2211.2 in case anybody was curious. And then you guys can look at these real quick and you guys can see whether or not they change, because there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to remember that much. I'm pretty much just going to try to focus on remembering if it goes higher than 122 or not. So, let's exit out of the game, hook this external monitor back up, and see what it can do. Well, alright, benchmark's all finished, and this is definitely the biggest jump we've gotten. We got 128 versus 122. So that's still like, what, a 6 FPS jump? Still only 1 more than what the guy said. He said 3 to 5 FPS max in games, and so far he still seems to be right on the money. But this is still the biggest jump we got, but I wouldn't say 6 FPS is worth going out and spending $200 on a monitor. But still, let's press on and run some more benchmarks, because we got a bunch more games to go through here. Now we're going to do a little bit of some Horizon Zero Dawn. So we're at 1080p here. Full screen, no FPS limit of any kind, maxed out the field of view, no VSync, as I said. Let's go real quick look at the graphics. We're doing ultimate quality preset. So just quickly go through here. And alright, of course if I go a little too fast with the settings, you can always pause. But now, let's run that benchmark, see how it is, and then we'll hook it up to the monitor. Well, here we go. We just got done with the benchmark here on the laptop itself, and we got ourselves 107 FPS, a max of 188, and a minimum of 62. And then there's our score, 19,250. And that was on ultimate quality at 1080p. And then we got more graphs and stuff you guys can all look at here and try and take a mental note of. Because now, it's time to hook this thing up to the external monitor and see how things go. Well, benchmark just got finished on the monitor now, external monitor, and we got an average of 110 this time, which I believe we got 107 last time, so that's only 3 FPS difference. Then you got 206 max, 56 minimum, so we actually lost a few because it was a minimum of 62 last time. And we got 19,834 for a score. And then you can check out all of these guys right here and try to remember what they were like on the other one, but should be pretty similar, it seems. But I'm pretty sure it was 107, but now I'm starting to think, what was it, 102? No, it was 107, wasn't it? Well, I'll figure that out when I'm in editing and try to tell you the averages at the end, like I said. So, now, why don't we go ahead and move on to the next game? Well, now we're going to do some Red Dead Redemption 2. So we're doing it at 1080p, no VSync. And we're just doing my settings. So here's what they are. And no advanced settings. So, with that said, now let's go run the benchmark real quick and then we'll see how it does on the external. And now I've thought of an idea. Might as well just snap a picture with my phone now that I'm using a picture of what it gets on 1080p. That way I can just look right in my hand and be like, it got this. Then I don't have to sit there and get confused like I did on the last one. So, why don't we run that benchmark now? Well now, benchmark's all done for Red Dead Redemption 2, and we got a minimum of 51, a max of 130, and an average of 106.7. So, now, why don't we go ahead, quit out of the game, and hook up our external monitor, and we'll run the benchmark all over again and see what we get. Well, alright guys, we're all done with the benchmark here, and we averaged 121. Got a minimum of 53 and a maximum of 145, so if we pull out our phone, before we got an average of 106, and this time we got an average of 121. Didn't get as big of a maximum though, but I believe since we got 106 and this got 121 now, that is a 15 FPS difference. If I did my math in my head real quick. I'm not the best at math, but I think I did that right. But anyway though, so that's our first meaningful showing of external monitor so far. Before it was just, you know, like the guy said, 3 to 5 FPS or 1 to 5, 6 FPS, something like that. And he was right on the money so far. This is the first one where it's a pretty meaningful FPS increase. But anyway though, why don't we move on to the next one now? Well, now for some Borderlands 3. We're running it in DX12 mode, full screen, 1080p, no VSync, unlimited frame rate and all that good stuff. Maxed out field of view. And then we pretty much got the game maxed out. Well, we do have the game maxed out. Just no motion blur. And we even have Fidelity FX sharpening on. So now we'll hop on over here. And now let's just go run a quick benchmark and we'll see what it gets. And then we'll hop on over to the monitor and see what it gets. Well, alright. We averaged 104.43 FPS in this benchmark. And now I'm not looking forward to doing this gameplay because it looks stuttery as crap compared to every other game. Every other game has been smooth frame time so far, but not this one. But average frame time still shows that it's good, but it was stuttering like crazy. Maybe it's just because I had to run through the benchmark once. We'll see once we do the external monitor next here. But speaking of that, there's just average FPS here and average frame time. That's all there is to this benchmark. So why don't we go ahead and exit out of the game and hook it up to the external and see how that one does. Well, alright, benchmark's all done on the external monitor, and we got 109 FPS with about the same average frame time. So I believe that's only about a 5 FPS increase, so not too much. So this game's back to about what the guy said. So far we've only really had one game where it's been a pretty decent amount. So anyway, why don't we now... Oh, I also wanted to say it was a lot smoother. I don't know if that's because it already ran the benchmark once, but just wanted to mention it was smoother on the external monitor. It still had a couple stutters here and there, but it was nothing like the being on the 1080p for the first time around. That was stutter central. Anyway though, don't know if it's because of the external monitor, because I ran the test once already, but just wanted to mention that. Anyway though, on to the next benchmark. Well, now we're going to do some Far Cry 6, so here are the settings we're going to run, 1080p, 300 Hz and all that good stuff. Quality, we're just going to max this bitch out, without ray tracing though. So everything's on ultra with HD textures, anything. Motion blur even, screw it. It's not like I'm actually playing right now. No ray tracing though. And we'll leave these two guys on too. So, now, oh, and then just the advanced settings here, just to show you we're at max field of view 2 with no FSR or anything else helping it out. So, now let's go run the benchmark and get a nice baseline. Benchmark for Far Cry 6 is all done on the just internal screen of the laptop here, and we got an average of 86. We got a maximum of 111 and a minimum of 64. And that's pretty much all there is for this. So now I just have to pull out my camera before I press escape so we can get a picture of it so I won't forget what it got. And then we can move on to the external screen. All right, benchmarks all finished on the external screen now. We got 89 average this time, so we went up a 3 FPS there. Now our maximum went up by quite a bit. I believe that's about an 12 FPS increase in maximums, and then another like 3 FPS increase here in the minimum. So nothing to write home about in this particular game. So now why don't we move on to the next game? Well, now let's do some Call of Duty, but first let's go through the settings. No VSync or nothing like that. Now let's go over to the quality tab here, custom, render resolution of 1080p, anything on, anything quality low, very low. It's pretty much competitive settings, really. That's what run it. Get all the way to the bottom here. There's quite a few settings. If I go a little too fast for you, you can obviously pause and check them all out. And then we've got maxed out field of view besides the third person. I guess let's just say fuck it. I don't think that matters at all for the benchmark, but let's just act like it does. And there we go. Now let's go run the benchmark and see how it does. Well, we averaged 171 in this benchmark with a low fifth of 137 and a low first of 127. Then here's some more performance summary right here. It tells you your bottlenecks. Then here's some system information over here for anyone that's interested. So now let's shut the game down and hook it up to the external monitor and try that one out and see what it gets. Well, this seems to be another game where the external monitor does get a pretty decent jump. We went from 171 to 185, which I believe is about a 14 FPS increase. And then even the 5% lows went from 137 to 144. And the low first went from 127 to 132, so everything increased a little bit here, but the average was the one that increased the most. So far, if you play a lot of Red Dead Redemption and Modern Warfare and Warzone, well then it seems like an external monitor is good, but other than that, so far it seems like it's not really worth it. But we still got a couple more games, so let's go and see how they do. Now for some Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And let's just take a quick look at the settings though first. We're at 1080p of course. No VSync or anything holding it back. Normal resolution scale. Graphics, we just maxed this thing out, just with no FSR or anything like that. Oop. Here we go, as you can see, no FSR or anything. So now, why don't we go run that benchmark real quick and we'll see what we get. Well, benchmark's all done for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We averaged 108. We got a minimum of 16, which is, I think, just bull, and a max of 202. We got a 1% low of 68 and a 0.1% low of 34. And then there's our frame time graph right here, CPU milliseconds right here, and GPU milliseconds right there, and VRAM and all that good stuff. Game settings, system info, all what have you. So now it's time to quit out of this game, hook up the external, and see how it does. Well, benchmark just got done. Get that out of your guys' way. Benchmark just got done for Valhalla on the external screen, and as you can see, we got the same average, so it made no difference in the average, but we at least got more minimum. Lost a couple max though. We went from 202 to 194 max, but we went and got more lowest. We were at 68, now it's at 74, and lowest 0.1 was at 34, and now it's at 57, so at least there's that, but besides that, doesn't really make a difference in this game, I would say. Not in the averages, anyway. So, on to the next game. Now, real quick, let's go through the settings of Watch Dogs Legion. We're at 1080p, no VSync, no FPS limit, maxed out field of view. And for quality, we're just maxed to completely out. Except for ray tracing. There's no ray tracing. I figured that would turn it into a slideshow. We wouldn't really get anything out of that, really. So now with that said, why don't we go ahead and run the benchmark, see what it gets. Well, benchmarks for Watch Dogs Legions is all finished. We got max FPS here of 103. We got an average of 72 and a minimum of 43, a 1% low of 50, and a 0.1% low of 44. You can see the system load and all that stuff and little frame time graphs right here. And now we can go ahead, quit out of the game, hook it up to the external, and do the test all over again and see how it does. Well, alright, benchmark for Watch Dogs Legion external monitor is all finished. We got a max of 128, so that actually went up quite a bit compared to the max 103. But max FPS really generally doesn't matter very much. Not unless you just undo your VSync or you have a computer like this where it's got a 300 hertz screen. But I care more about average FPS and 0.1 lows and all of that stuff. But our average went from 72 to 76, so a whopping 4 FPS there. And our minimum actually went down. We were at 43 and now we're at 33. But our 1% lows went up by 1. It was 51 versus 50 here. The old one, 1080p, got on the normal screen, laptop screen was 50. This one got 51. And then a 0.1% lows did go down because, well, our minimums are down, so of course. Anyway, though, so another one where it doesn't make a huge difference, just about 4 FPS average. So now let's move on to the next game, shall we? Now for some Rainbow Six, or not Rainbow Six, we got some, I don't know what this is actually. This is Rainbow Extraction? Might be Rainbow Six Extraction, I don't know. But this is one of the Rainbow games. It's the newest one. It is Extraction. But let's go through the settings. We're at 1080p, 300 hertz, no VSync, maxed out field of view. Go down here, we maxed the game completely out. And all right. Now let's go benchmark that PC and see how it does. Then we'll move on to the external. Well, benchmark's all done here. And we only averaged 48, so this game's a lot harder to run than I thought. Was there like a ray tracing setting I accidentally left on or something? Well, anyway, if it gets more FPS by an external monitor, it'll still get more FPS. Just won't look very playable or impressive, but that's not the point of this video. So we got 48 average, a minimum of 29, and a maximum of 63. So why don't we now quit and go hook it up to the external monitor and see what it does with that. Well, the benchmark's all finished and we got an average of 56 this time instead of 48, so I do believe that is an 8 FPS increase. And then our minimum went up from 29 to 34 and our max went from 63 to 68. So this game gets a somewhat decent jump. Not, oh my god, crazy like 2 of the other games did, where it was like 14 and 15 FPS, but that's still a reasonably decent FPS jump, but still I don't think I would be going and spending $200 on an external monitor for 8 FPS. But hey, maybe it would be even more if we had the settings like more competitive or something, who knows. But I had no idea this game was that hard to run. I kind of completely forgot. I ran it already, but completely forgot. But regardless, at least we still got some good data. So, on to the next game. Now for some F122. So we're on the right GPU here. So there we go. So now that we've done all of that, let's go run a quick benchmark. Benchmark for F122 is all finished. We got a minimum of 55, an average of 65, and a maximum of 77. So with that said, why don't we go close it and then run this benchmark on the external monitor real quick. And I think I saw at the beginning, while I was going through the settings, something saying I only have 60 minutes remaining. So that's crazy. I've spent 10 hours benchmarking F122 so far. That's nuts. Anyway though, why don't we go and move on before we run out of time? Well, alright guys. Benchmark for F1 is all done and we got a minimum of 52, which is less actually. I think we lost performance. We did. We got a minimum before of 52. And this time we only got 62 for average. We used to get 65. And then we got max of 77, and this time we only got 74. So in this particular game, F1 2022, you lose performance. going to an external monitor. Interesting, even though it's 1080p and all that stuff. Very interesting. I wasn't expecting that. But anyway, let's move on to the next game, shall we? Well, last up, we're going to do Final Fantasy 15 benchmark. And we're going to go on high quality at 1080p, full screen. And that's really all there is to this. And at the end, we'll turn the camera back on, see what it gets, and then we'll move on to the external monitor. Well, the benchmark's all finished, and this is not one that has averages or anything. But we'll be able to tell by the score. And if it ends up only being like 3-4 or a score higher, we're just going to say it's the same kind of thing. But anyway, we got 10,476 at 1080p high. And that says that's very high performance. So, that's very good. Now, the game did seem a little stuttery, so honestly, on this game, I'd probably limit the FPS to like 60 through Afterburner or some other way, because otherwise it's going to stutter and be annoying. Unless you can deal with a random stutter here and there. You can, and it's pretty playable from what it looked like from the benchmark anyway. But now, let's go see how it fares at 1440p. Well, at 1080p on the 1440p external anyway. Well, alright, benchmark's all finished running here. And we got 10,643 this time. And I'm pretty sure, I honestly had a stoner moment there and forgot to take a picture of it, what it got before. But I'm pretty sure it got 10,476 before. I could be wrong. Obviously, I'm going to make that comment after I go through the video and make the video. I'll make a comment and pin it telling you what all the averages are between all of the games, just so for people who don't even want to watch this whole video can just go, oh, there we go. But anyway, this was the last game I had on the list. So I figured, why don't we go ahead and wrap this video on up now. Well, alright guys, that is a wrap for this video. And it appears, I'm going to give it to the guy who commented. I don't really see a huge increase in FPS except for in 3 games. Red Dead Redemption 2, there was like a 15 FPS increase by external monitor. Modern Warfare, Modern Warfare, there was a 14. And then there was another game, I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was, but there was another one that had 8 FPS better. I believe it was maybe it was that Tom Clancy's Extraction, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like I was saying a couple times in the video, I plan to, as I'm making the video, go and look over all the averages, and I'm going to take notes, either on my iPad or on my phone, or just on a notepad on the computer, and just write down all of the averages on the computer itself with no external monitor, and then put the averages with the monitor right next to it with the game it goes to and all of that whatnot. That way, for people who don't even want to watch the whole video, they'll know. But yeah, the conclusion to this video is, I personally would not waste extra money on a monitor. Unless you've already got one around, or you plan on using it as a desktop replacement and it's easier to have an external monitor, cool. But unless all you want to play is Red Dead Redemption 2 and Modern Warfare, then I wouldn't really recommend it. That's a lot of extra money. But anyway, at least I'm glad we did this, because now we know. The majority of games don't really see much more than like a 3 to 5 FPS increase like the guy said, and there's a couple outliners where it does matter, but that's so few. That's 3 games. 3 games out of all the games I tested. And then even one, F122, got worse FPS hooked up to an external monitor. Even though it was 1080p, I checked. It said 1080p at the end of the benchmark. So I don't know what happened there. It was only a couple FPS, but a couple FPS is a couple FPS. So anyway though, that's my conclusion. I wouldn't worry about having an external monitor for performance purposes anyway. So at least now we know. So that's pretty cool. Now I think the next video I want to make is on that universal, or the AMD tuning utility. I downloaded it, got it installed. Well, not installed, but unzipped and whatnot. So I have a desktop icon, but I still haven't messed around with it yet. So I figured soon, I'll do a versus Armory Crate setting. And for Armory Crate, for that one, so I don't have to uninstall it every freaking time. That would get really annoying. I'll just put it on Windows. And if you put it on Windows, it should not mess with anything anymore and just let Windows take over, meaning the AMD Universal Utility there should be totally usable and it shouldn't get interfered with. But obviously, if I'm wrong about that, the 3 or 4 people that recommended I try that out will definitely probably let me know in the comments of this video, or in the comments of the other video if I mess something up. And then I don't mind redoing it. If I mess up, I certainly don't mind redoing it and admitting I messed up. But anyway, that's about all I got for you guys for this particular video. I sure as hell hope you enjoyed it, because I sure as heck enjoyed making it. So until the next one, peace out, guys.